Everybody, welcome to J&J On Jazz, sponsored by Jazzwire.
My friend Jeff here has an autographed poster of Pat Metheny in his house. Is that right?
Oh yeah, it's hanging right over there. And I just learned that James has a ashtray from the Playboy Club from like 1968 or something.
I found this in a desk in my house. The desk belongs to my father. And so I asked my dad where this came from, and he said he went to the Playboy Club in 1968 or 1969 on spring break. And so I have this. And he said, I want it back. And I'm like, no.
Well, okay, so world's greatest spring break. Moving on. Yeah.
You can't have it back, Dad.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Well, all right. So what we want to talk about today is memorizing tunes. So right there's a presumption that we should memorize tunes, sort of built into the title of the video. And yes, memorize tunes. I mean, I don't know about James. I came from classical piano. As a kid, I played classical piano for 10 or 12 years and then went to classical saxophone. That's how cool I was as a kid. Classical saxophone. Yeah, what are you laughing at? All right.
No, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, That is the appropriate response, I'm sorry to say. But so I was a fantastic reader, and I was very comfortable with notes in front of me, and I really could and can read well. And so that was my comfort zone. And when somebody said, memorize this and put the music away, that scared the crap out of me. And I mean, I'm talking about well into college and well into a master's degree up at North Texas. So when I started memorizing tunes, I started getting better faster, like really fast. It was interesting. So yes, memorize songs. And so how do we do that, right? And especially we're talking to the adults out there, and you know, we don't memorize things as well as we used to, and we don't memorize them as long as, you know, all that. So let's get some strategies. So James, what do you got? How do you approach memorizing a tune?
Awesome. And I just +1 for yes, memorize. Let me just get like 15 seconds to get up on my jazz educator soapbox. When I see players at a session or on a gig, look, we all have to reach for the iRealB from time to time, right? We all have to do that. But the more tunes you know, the more open you're going to be on the bandstand, the more engaged with the music you're going to be. Get your eyes out of those lead sheets on the bandstand. Memorize, yes.
Hear, hear.
So my challenge growing up was that I was not anything like Jeff. I'm still not anything like Jeff, and it makes life really challenging on so many levels. But I did read well, but I was an ear player. I've talked about this a lot. So I could hear my way through a lot of tunes, but memorizing chord changes was very challenging for me. In fact, I don't think it wasn't until college that I really started to be able to memorize the chord changes to tunes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that didn't matter because my ears were good enough that I could get through tunes just by hearing them. But it wasn't until I started to learn how to play chord changes on the piano that the chord changes to tunes would be memorized, and they would come at me like big sort of aural road signs on the highway, right? So I'm not going to show you guys anything other than to say, if you're not a guitar player or a piano player, or even if you are for that matter, learn to play these standards tunes with the 3rd and 7th in your right hand and the root in your left hand. That's all you need, right? Put a metronome on, real slow, play these things in time while you're looking at a lead sheet. Now, I'm just talking about memorizing chord progressions. I'm not talking about memorizing melodies, right? So that's really important, I think, for those of us that are non-chordal instrument players. And the other tip that I have, learn to walk bass lines. If you are a horn player or a guitar or a piano player, anybody, bass player, learn to walk bass lines. It's the best way to get inside the harmony of a tune, right? So those two things right there are really a big part of my approach to helping people memorize the chord changes to tunes, so that you're not getting vapor lock and trying to like memorize them by sight or anything like that. It's really important to be able to hold the harmony in your hand, and bass lines help you get through those tunes. So those are my two little tips for everybody.
Man, I love them. And what you were talking about is sort of leaving your role as the trumpet player, the horn player, the lead player, and being a rhythm section player. So you're talking about playing the chords on the piano, having an understanding of the graphic keyboard in front of you, And then playing bass lines, right? Because that's the foundation. So if you know the foundation of what's going on, it makes sense that everything above that is going to be there. So that's very smart. I like that a lot.
Well, and I thought I got the bass line idea because I was like, I'd be playing with great bass players, and it's like one in particular in Pittsburgh, a guy named Paul Thompson, who I've known for years, and Paul just knows every tune ever. And I asked him once years ago. He might not even remember this. I'm like, PT, man, you memorize things so quickly. He's like, I'm the bass player. Like I hold these tunes in my hand, multiple for chorus after chorus after chorus. I mean, so there's a real ownership that develops there, I think, in bass players, and I've always been inspired by him in particular. So. Listen to great bass players if you're not a bass player, and learn to walk their bass lines.
Very smart. I love it. Great. Well, before I go on to my end of things here, I want to remind everybody about these 4 Jazzwire online workshops coming up, all 4 Thursdays in October. You can see over my shoulder. They happen on Thursdays at 2 p.m. in the afternoon Eastern time. I get that may not work for everybody, but you can also get recordings of these workshops. But the important thing, I'd love people to tune in person. There's only 15 spots per workshop. I keep it limited at 15 because I want to be playing for each other. I want conversations. I want questions. I want us to get to know each other. So we have only about 3, maybe 4 spots left for each of these workshops. On October 7th, transcribing, we're going to look at a Sonny Stitt solo and talk about how do we analyze a solo and make it actionable. What's the next step? We're going to talk about that. On the 14th of October, Coltrane minor pentatonic scale. It's this really cool sound that's very usable in a lot of different settings. And so for the more intermediate advanced folks out there, I think you might get a lot out of that. We're going to do gospel and the blues. Like, what's up with that sound that we hear from Nat Adderley and from Horace Silver and all those great players? How do we get that in our playing? Do we have to wait for a particular song to get that sound? How do we get the sound? We're going to be working it out. And then the last one is on fluidity and fingers. Again, the adult students that we have here that we're talking to, how do we find that fluidity in our fingers that maybe don't move as well as they used to, or maybe our brain doesn't quite know what a good lick to play is? This is all practicing kind of stuff that I can get you up and running. Honestly, in 10 minutes, you're going to be more fluid than you've ever been. So it's going to be great. So this is where you go to register. Recordings of the workshops are $20 each. They're $35 each, or all 4 for $120. So I hope we'll see you there. Only a handful of spots left. Some may actually be sold out by this point. So jump on it. Okay, so memorizing tunes. Yeah, so we're 100% agreed that this is an important thing to do. For me, the biggest point I want to say is the hardest song you'll ever memorize is the first one, because you don't really have a lot of backstory to rely on. You're not quite sure how it's done. The hardest time you ever drove a car was probably the first time. You didn't know what the gas pedal felt like. You didn't know what the clutch did and how a gear shift felt, right? The 10th time, the 100th time, lots easier. So same thing. So the biggest thing is memorize a song. I would say a blues, a short form. So the blues is 12 measures long, and pick a riff blues. Blues in the Closet or some tune like that where the melody is 2 measures long and it just gets repeated a bunch. Most of us can have a song memorized in about 10 minutes. And that's what I help people at Jazzwire do all day long. So do that. Now, once you know 5 tunes, the 6th tune is easier. Here's the counterintuitive thing. When you know 100 songs, you may think your hard drive is getting a little full and the 101st song is impossible. I disagree. I think the 101st song is super easy because you've got 100 other songs to relate it to. Oh, this is just a 2-5-1 like that other one. Oh, here's that dominant 2 chord like in Take the A Train. Oh, the bridge goes to the key of 4 just like such and such. Does that make sense, James?
Oh yeah, you notice those patterns and those tendencies real quick. But you're right. Get 100 tunes under your belt, and these standards from the Great American Songbook, yeah, they're all unique, but they all have a lot of similarities. So that's a great point, Jeff.
Yeah. So that's it. So don't feel fearful of all these many songs to learn. Start with one, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one jazz song, I think is the quote.
Sure.
It's got to be it. I'm almost certain that's it.
Mark Twain, right?
Mark Twain definitely said that, right.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I've got a fence that needs painting. You're going to love it. Come, it'll be fun. Little hook fin there. Never mind. I'm Canadian, and I'm quoting...
I know.
All right. Well, so in honor of Pat Metheny, who's over there glaring at me from the signed poster on my wall, just today I was reminded of a hard-ass Pat Metheny song called Missouri Uncompromised. It's awful on the saxophone. It's got to be awful on all instruments. The opening line, and I'm trying to do it from memory. So all that, it's pretty. All that's over an A triad, kind of an A major 7. And so, and it's angular and it doesn't fit on the horn and it's a drag. Okay, so all that 4 measures. So the first thing I noticed, it's all diatonic. All of those notes are from the A major scale. So I don't have to wonder, is it a C natural or is it a C sharp? I've just remembered, here's the zone, right? I can't remember, am I supposed to be on this side of the line or that side of the line? Well, you're playing football, this is in and that's out, right? So all of a sudden, 7 of these notes are in the major scale, right? So little intellectual tricks like that.
Yeah. I like that.
That's helpful. I used to have a hard time memorizing There'll Never Be Another You until I realized, I think there's 2 notes in that song that are not in the E flat major scale. There's all sorts of chords. It jumps around. It shifts. It's wonderful stuff going on. But it's 2 or 3 notes that aren't in the major scale. So when I have a question, I can't remember, is this an A natural or an A flat? We're in E flat. It's an A flat. But so there, again, is some presumed knowledge. Got to know your scales, your major scales. Ooh, if this is a harmonic minor sound, do you know harmonic minor? That trick won't work if you don't know that scale, right? So another thing, the opening of this Pat Metheny line. Reminds me of a lick I know. I don't know if it was a Michael Brecker lick or something, but the idea of playing a shape. I did a Digging Deeper video on this shape. 1, 2, 5. In whatever key. I'm in the key of A major. 1, 2, 5. It's a really hip, angular thing that in some correct keys, it works well on the saxophone. Not sure about the trumpet. How friendly that is.
Doesn't work on the trumpet. Nothing works on the trumpet.
Nothing works on the trumpet. Okay, now we know.
No.
Yeah. So that's sort of a guitaristic thing. But I practiced it and I know that sound. Turns out that's the opening line, that big fanfare kind of sound, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2.
Oh, cool.
Right? So it's like, okay, so that reminds me of a lick I learned 20 some years ago. So again, having this, in this file cabinet, I've got some folders in there, some things I can relate to. And so as the song goes through, sometimes a melodic thing helps me remember the chord change. Or in this instance, I remember we're in A major. It reduces the number of possible notes. And now I can use my ears to go, I think I remember what it is. Sometimes the melody reminds me of the chord. Sometimes the chord reminds me of the melody. So that's why I love what James was saying about being able to play this stuff on the piano. And by the way, when you play it on the piano, you see it graphically. I'm a visual learner. Or when you walk those bass lines, when you know the melody, or rather when you know the harmony, it can remind you of the melody a little bit. So in this song, Missouri Uncompromised, there's all sorts of moments. It's so well written. It's very with the chords, but the chords are weird. They're not traditional jazz chords. They're hard to memorize. It's shifting around chromatically and all this crazy stuff. But I can remember it because the melody reminds me of the chords. It's written so well that way. So I think my point here is just get started, just do it, just take the first step. memorize a song. And in that process of learning the song, learning the form, learning the chords, you now have a bunch of building blocks that I don't care what the second song you pick is, there's going to be things that you bring forward from that first song. So for those of us that rely on our ears, I'm going to coach you to start intellectually understanding what's going on a little better, if that's the way to put it. Like James was saying, foundation, bass kind of stuff. Don't just do it by ear. There's a lot that you can gain by doing it intellectually. For those of you that do everything intellectually, what James is talking about, sit down and hear what this stuff sounds like. So for me, I like that idea. And I think that's really how human memory works anyway, is that we have these sort of file cabinets in our head. And, we sort of go to that file cabinet that has things in there that remind us of that thing. So,
Yeah.
The more we start filling up those file cabinets, the easier it gets. What do you think?
Take it. I love it, Jeff. These are all, again, we're about actionable things here, right? And these are things you can incorporate into your practicing immediately that will start to have benefits. So, yeah, that's great. I love it.
And we brought up a lot of, play bass lines. Well, how do you play a bass line? What's a good bass line? Well, of course, Jazzwire. That's the power of what we do at a place like Jazzwire. Somebody gets on tomorrow, is like, some teacher told me I should play bass lines on my trombone. How do I do that? Well, yes, we will talk about that. Or this idea of finding shapes inside melodies. Well, here's a melody. I'm not finding any shapes at all. Jeff, your advice sucks. Well, let's look at that melody and let's see if we can't find a shape, right? And so that's the idea. So we have some nice little germs of ideas here, but to expand them, that's where the rubber hits the road. So I want to see you guys inside Jazzwire. So if you haven't yet, jump into the free trial, see what I'm talking about, see how Jazzwire works, and see all of the hundreds of people in there who are working together getting this stuff done. So very important topic, James. I really appreciate your take on it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you referencing Pat Metheny, and I want to say that for the record, I think that you have better flow than Pat Metheny. I'm not talking about your playing, I'm talking about your hair. I think really he's got great hair, but you've leveled up on Pat Metheny in the hair department. Just congratulations. Man,
I'm going to go to bed a happy man. Do you know, by the way, do you know how to tell Pat Metheny and I apart? It's our checkbook. It's yeah, you'd never mistake us again. Just saying. So yeah,
Pat's gonna sue us, probably me. So. Pat.
He can afford a great lawyer. All
we
right.
have to end this episode now.
Yeah, this is the perfect time to stop talking. James, take care, my friend.
Bye.
Bye.